a couple of albums that I did with Dizzy's big band in '56 were very inspiring, being that I was making history with a great such as Dizzy Gillespie. The band was a very serious band, having a lot of fun everywhere we went, every time we went on the bandstand, because we knew we were in control of the music. Everybody knew the music well. I memorized all of my parts, everything. I memorized the whole piano book. And so Boo loved me because he never had to carry the piano book, which is the biggest book in the band, because I memorized everything. Which reminds me, one time in Yugoslavia, Dizzy asked the people for a request, and they requested the Cabana B, Cabana Bop suite. Oh boy, everybody looked at each other. Everybody whipped out their music. I didn't have anything to whip out. And I said, oh my God, through my perplexities, man, as soon as I hit the first note, everything unraveled, man. It was fine. You know, we had a ball, man. We got a standing ovation for that, you know. But I really loved that music because I had heard it so much before playing with the band, you know. And it was just like, I won't say it was a refresher course, but it was something that was very necessary, you know, in my repertoire to know all of those tunes, you know. And I just loved it because I always loved the background parts and everything, you know, all the different sections, individual section works. And I got a lot out of that band, you know. We had some very good arrangers writing all this music. It was just nice playing in the company of these great musicians. It was so much fun, you know. And we would go by Dizzy's room to just check his attitude, you know, see how the climate was, you know, in the dressing room before we'd hit, you know, just to see whether it was going to be a good night or bad night, man. If Dizzy was in good spirits, baby, oh, watch it. Because Dizzy would play, man. He'd sit right up on top of that band, you know. He was so beautiful. He plays so pretty. He plays such a pretty trumpet, man, for a big band, boy. You know, skirting in and out of the music. It was really nice. Which reminds me, I remember we played Philadelphia, and they said, we heard about this young talent by the name of Lee Morgan, and he came by Peps one night with the big band. And he sat in, and he sounded so good. Dizzy gave him all of his solos, Night in Tunisia and everything, and Lee ate him up. He read all the first chairs parts, you know, first trumpet parts, really nice, you know. Yeah, boy, Lee was a beautiful trumpet player too, man. Very inspiring. I love Lee. I've worked with him with Art Blakey's band in '59, and through that period, Jazz Gallery, we traveled to Europe and everywhere. Lee Morgan was a beautiful man. I love Lee. And funny, I named him Howdy Doody, you know. He just laughed. He said, "You got me, Davis." Oh man, I love Lee. Yeah, we were very close too. We were very close through the years. We had a nice band with Art. With Wayne Shorter, them two horns, boy, really played some nice things. Jimmy Merritt and myself. It was a real good period for us. But when he came and sat in with us with Dizzy's band, that was really nice because of the respect that he has for Dizzy. You know, it was very interesting to see. And listen how he played it off. It was so nice. Really nice. That was a good band. The next biggest thing I think was when I went to Paris for a year with Donald Byrd, Bobby Jasper, Arthur Taylor, Doug Watkins, and myself. We had a nice quintet. Bobby Jasper won a poll, and they told him to get a group, and they'd give him a tour. and record them and everything. So he came to the States. We went back with him, and that was really fun. That was the same year as the World's Fair. So after the tour, we went to the World's Fair, hung out, and that's where we all got separated. And I really formally had to learn French at that time because I had to make it to Paris. And I was alone, because we all got separated. But by some trick of fate, I got to Paris before everybody else. And when they got there, I knew, I had a bunch of connections all over town, all the best places to stay, eat, and everything. And I had friends all over town. Because I ran into L.D. Jackson, who knew what was happening. He just turned me on right away. He said, come on, man. And he just took me on a trip one night and introduced me to all these great people for anything that I would need at any time. And so when the guys came in town, I said, wow, you guys just getting here? What took you so long? What do you want? What do you need? And I had it, I knew where everything was. It was really nice. I love Paris. Stayed there a year. And man, it's fantastic. Because we were working every night there, Doug Watkins wandered out over by the Sharky Pesh, and the woman said, you part of that group. I've been looking for you guys. I want you to come in my place. And we stayed there for a solid year. And she paid us nightly for all that time. It was a nice gig, Met a lot of people. OP used, Oscar Pettiford used to come in and jam with us on the cello, Oh man, that was really nice. OP used to come by my room and talk to me every morning. Well, a lot of mornings, And he used to tell me things. Because I would listen, Because I just loved the man so much. I had so much respect for Oscar Pettiford. Man, are you kidding? So it was really a nice experience. He just talked. Just had a lot of things to get off his chest, I guess, And I was a good listener. Arthur Taylor, boy. Good drummer, man. I love the way E.T. plays, Swing his butt off, man. Yeah, that was Bud's man, Yeah, he didn't have him playing with him for nothing. Yeah, I like A.T. a lot, man. He's very real, He's very real, very real. And if there's something guys don't like about him, it might be his realism, because he's very real, and I love him. He sit down and drums, baby, and make you think there's something wrong with you. If you don't like him, because he can really play. I love the way he can play. He may not agree with me, but I love him. We've done some things duo, man, because we couldn't find a bass player that we could hook up in between us, But it was okay. I love it. Serious, straight ahead swing. The minute he sits down. Doug was okay, too. Bobby Jasper, boy, we used to bomb him out, man. But we didn't cool it. He just got stronger, man, so we wouldn't force him out. He just got stronger, and he got to where he could stand it. That's all, And we were playing hard bop at that time, and everything was very accented and, anticipated and let you bam, 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 whatever, And right after that, we went into the Blue Note Records camp, And when I did my own album, Davis Cup, those tunes came out of one of my school notebooks. I wrote them a long time ago. And I just needed a whole bunch of tunes, so I just looked in there and ripped the pages out of the book and said, okay. And then wrote up parts for me, But I had those tunes written. You know, I love Jackie, man. We used to hang out, you know, a lot, you know, musically and every other way, too. I used to go by his house and wake him up, and we get together and get out of the streets and hang, you know. Jackie, but we used to have so much fun together, man, laughing and talking about music and playing and jamming and everything, you know. And Blue Note was a natural for us, you know, really natural, because I could write as fast as I could talk at that time, you know.
So were these new tunes here?
Those
greasy sweet cakes.
Oh yeah. They were inspired by the moods and the atmospheres around. The others were as well, even though they were old, you know, older rather. They were all things I had thought about and felt, you know, and I just had to get them out, you know, at that time, you know. They didn't change by the time I recorded them, you know, so they were my own original ideas, you know. Things that were coursing through my system at the time, you know. So like time was like compared to what, you know. Jackie was, still is a beautiful human being, man. It's really, I don't know, Jackie's a lovely person, man. Him and Dolly was so nice. I used to love them, man, you know. And, you know, Renee and Vernon and Melanie, you know. It's such a nice family, man, you know. They're really a sweet family. They were all so nice to me, you know. I love Jackie. Jackie was just a great guy, you know, because I remember when I was playing with Bird up at the Apollo Bar, Bird told me about Jackie, and Sonny Rollins told me about Jackie. Say, man, you got to meet this guy. He's just like you. I said, oh, come on. So one day we were all standing out in front of the Apollo Bar, and I'm standing there with Bird. And up the street here comes Sonny Rollins and Jackie coming toward us, you know. And it was so beautiful, man, because they introduced us and stood back and watched us. And we just looked at each other and we both broke out and smiled and we grabbed each other and hugged each other right there, man. It was so nice. Because they knew we were going to hook up and we were like destined to meet each other, you know. Bird and Sonny Rollins really wanted us to know each other. That was so nice, you know. Fun, man. All them dates were fun. It was a lot of fun, you know. Donald Byrd had a very natural thing for that trumpet, man. His lines and everything, you know. He was very easy to play with, I thought, you know. And he could always interpret my music. He would always play it just like I meant it, you know, with no sweat, you know. Which reminds me of Duke Ellington, you know, when he writes. He doesn't write for a baritone saxophone. He writes for Harry Carney, you know. He doesn't write for an alto. He writes for Rabbit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So at this time, were you specifically writing for Jackie and for Donald Byrd?
Yes, for the sound that I wanted, yeah. I wrote for what I heard them playing in the framework of the idiom, you know.
How about Davis Cup? How'd you feel doing your first record? You know, it was your big break.
Well, I was always funny. Right? I was always a different kind of guy about that, man. I still feel like I'm still just learning, man. You know, I was approached much before that, you know, to record. Years before that by Blue Note. Probably before Horace, you know. But I got an attitude. I said, no, come on, I'm still learning to play, man. I'm not playing nothing yet. Hold it, you know. But anyway, by this time, I was in a writing groove, you know, and I was surrounded by these great musicians. There was always good guys to play the music, you know, and I was really into writing. And we had this clique that used to record a lot together, you know, Jackie and Donald, and either Paul or Sam playing bass, you know. And it was very organic at that time to do something on my own, you know.
Mm-hmm. And this is, you handpicked these musicians specifically?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I really dug these guys.
How about what the tunes were about a little bit? So maybe some of the titles were Rumba Numba.
Yeah, but actually that's called Rumba Number.
Rumba Numba.
Dig it? That's Rumba Number. That's how that was, you know, just like saying, hey, let's play the Rumba Number. So I spelled number the same way I spelled rumba. That's all, you know, Rumba Number. That's what that was about, you know. And I thought, you know, somewhere that it's just an open kind of rhythmic attitude I had, you know, of no particular islands, but islandy, you know, but any warm island anywhere. It could be Tahiti, you know, or it wouldn't, in other words, it wouldn't have to necessarily be the Caribbean, you know. It could just as well be an island somewhere in the Mediterranean, you know. And maybe even more so.
About Smake It. Boo named the record after that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing we used to always talk about, you know. Meaning, it's like saying, let's make it, you know, smake it. You know, Lee Morgan and I used to see each other in the morning, you know, and we'd speak to each other, say, sapnin, snuffin', smatter, you know, G yet? No, Jew, you know. And we used to use these things, these colloquialisms like that, you know. And so we got to using them like this. Smake it, sapnin, sup. It's the same thing, you know. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah, to remember some of the incidents that we had lived through at that time, you know. And that makes me think of Jackie, Lee Morgan, how we used to play with those things every day, you know, he and I.
Did you have a mind to become a leader at this time?
Not so much. I was a little too free in my head, you know. But had I had the right business behind me, probably so, you know. But I didn't believe in the business that was happening at the time, you know. Because I remember even hanging out with, I used to always go, I used to hang out with Jimmy Smith a lot in Philly when I go down there, you know. He and I used to trade up ideas at the piano, you know. And I remember one day he told me, he said, listen, man, Bud and Monk played everything on the piano. Let's play what we're playing on the organ. You know, nobody's done it on the organ yet. I said, okay, help yourself. I'm going to stay with the piano. Last time I saw him backstage at very next time I saw him backstage at the Apollo Theater, you know, he's standing out there pulling up his pants and saying, yeah, I told you to come on with me. I'm rich now. I'm rich. And he hit, you know. He hit because, true, nobody was doing it, you know. But I wanted to play the piano. I just didn't have that so-called business head for that. You know, the main thing was to play to me, you know, and I was still learning to play. I still am now, as though, but I don't feel the same way about the business anymore, you know, because I know the business makes the whole thing work, you know. Oh man, I learned so much with art, because I had been knowing art so long. By this time I'm going out with art, I must have known art 15 years by now, you know, so I'm like family with art, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, he never kept anything from me, you know. Everything was stock, you know, realism. And he liked me, and I learned a lot of things from art. I remember one night, the first time playing in Paris. We played this big concert hall. It was the first time or whatever, anyway. I remember going to Art and telling him I didn't feel so good. So right after that tune, you know, he goes up to the mic and says, "Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to feature our pianist, playing anything he wants to." And I look up and all I see is coattails in the wind. Everybody's leaving me out on stage alone. And I said, "What?" So, you know, I had an attitude, and I just grabbed a handful of keys. And the moment I grabbed a handful of keys, I knew exactly what I was going to play and everything, and it worked out fine, you know. But I had to learn that, you know, and he made me face that because this is a packed house, man. There were people everywhere, you know. It looked like, well, literally, it was thousands of people, man, everywhere, just listening. And they were looking at me expecting something, you know. And I learned how to use that energy, you know, from those people, you know. Such a thing as stage fright, man. I mean, Jesus Christ. Well, that's the energy that you use. This is the magic, you know. This is all of the magic. Probably the same kind of magic that they put the pyramid up with, you know. The collective focus, you know, which is very strong, crystallized on any one point in time, you know, in space. Something. So it's very interesting to use that energy. That's one of the strongest powers in the universe. Yeah.
What about, how about the night that Bud played?
Oh man, I hadn't seen Bud in a long time, you know. And we played this concert, and somewhere in the middle of the concert, this Frenchman comes up to the microphone and announces, "We have a guest in the house." And he said, "The amazing Bud Powell." And so off to the left of the hall from the stage, the left over there, this middle door came Bud Powell. He came in on that side, walked up the aisle, along the wall, and up on stage. And he came up. I was so glad to see him. I just embraced him, you know, and we always called each other Sugar, you know. And we went through all of this, you know, for a moment. And I just bowed to him and rapidly backing off stage, you know, until I got into the wings and he was standing out there at the piano, you know. And I told him before I did, I said, "Boy, I'm so glad to see you, man. I got to hear you play, Bud. I want to hear you," you know. And I just backed off, man. And he sat down and he carried on, man. He really threw down. Who is it? Lee Morgan. And Wayne. Well, we had been playing Bouncing with Bud, one of Bud's tunes. A couple of things in the band anyway. So it was apropos. Bud was there. And Bud Powell threw down that thing. It was so beautiful. And if you hear the recording, you hear how long he played, you can tell he really wanted to play, you know. And after that, we hung out. Lee and I hung out for a while, man. That was strange, too. But we had a lot of fun together, you know. I always had a lot of fun when I ran into Bud, man, you know. Bud is just a different kind of man, you know. He always had some different things going, you know. I guess, you know, I used to, I don't know, I saw a strange side of Bud Powell hanging out with him and ladies. I remember way back in the Birdland days, you know, he and I were hanging out and he was singing, you know, to the ladies, man. You know, this was very interesting to hear Bud Powell sing. Very interesting. Heavy into lyrics, you know. Yeah, Bud loved beauty. I have to play Bud stuff, you know, because he, you know, a lot of the tunes, a lot of Bud's tunes, he had forgotten himself, you know, near the end, because I asked him about a lot of those things. When he came back to Birdland the last time before he died, you know, I was at his rehearsal there, and I asked him to play some of the tunes that he had showed me personally when we were hanging out in Philadelphia, you know, out in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, you know, at his mother's house. And he forgot. He asked me to play him for him, you know, and I played him, you know, and he looked at me so strange, you know. I said, Bud, you taught me all those songs. And he looked at me with this gratifying look as if to say, wow, well, I didn't really, you know, forget him. At least I gave him to somebody who'll play him, you know. So, you know, through my allegiance to Bud, you know, and what he's meant to the business, you know. Because I think out of all of that period, I think he's one of the biggest individuals personally. But Powell is, oh man, he's giant, you know?
What I remember is the high point of the Cool Festival last year was the tribute to Bud.
Yeah.
And why don't you talk about that night a little bit?
Yeah. Well, Bud, I always feel honored to be able to play his things, you know, because I got so much from Bud through his music, you know, being his guinea pig, you know. When he worked on a lot of his songs like Umponko Loco, The Foof, Glass Enclosure, Oblivion, and a bunch of other things. I was the guinea pig. He taught them to me, you know, so I could play them and he'd walk around and listen and run over and lean over me and chomp out different chords at different places. Change this. When you come out of B, go back to A and then play this little 3 bars or so and then go back to A again and take it out. Little things like that, you know. And I do that. And he run back over to the piano again and say, no, all right, that's good. Now do this now. When you come back, play it this way. And he would be barking these orders to me, you know, and I keep playing these tunes over and over and over and over and over and over. So I think I should know them tunes, right? I mean, he made sure I know them. I knew them, you know. And understandably, for a good reason. I mean, I think that was very wise of him, you know. I didn't realize till later, you know, what he gave me by running me through all them tunes, you know, with his good wishes, you know. But it was very interesting, because of the way he voiced and the way he played these things, you know. And Monk was the same way in that they, you know, they'd have a chord, but every note wasn't played the same way within the chord. Or they might be struck together, but they all wouldn't be struck the same way, you know. And that was very interesting, you know. But I was privileged to learn so much of his music directly from him, you know. And haven't forgotten them. And they were always wonderful for me to play and reflect on, because once I played them, so many things run back through my head from the period. Different things that used to happen, you know? They all come with the music, man. It's just like opening a door, And when I speak of opening that door, I'm not always talking about to the past, because we used to always talk about creating an army of guys playing bebop, playing this new music, We used to talk about this, Bud and myself, Kenny Clark, Art Blakey, got to recruit this army, Bird, get everybody to play this music. But it's strange. Everybody's playing it now anyway. Without even calling it bebop. They call it other things, And they're playing it on other instruments, electronic instruments and whatnot. But it's all, it all came from this one seed that was so strong it could be broken down into so many parts in different variables,
What do you think of the idea of the Bud concert, like a concert of bringing different people together to play all of Bud Powell's music?
I think it's a heck of an idea, man, because we still haven't heard all of his music, even with that. He's written so much of it, and it's good for the people to hear the class that he would inject into the sound. It wasn't just music, it had a class to it, a very high spiritual quality, that was great, And like I said, I used to listen to all of these discs that he recorded practicing. He would tear a song all the way down to nothing and recreate it, man, to try to find the best way to render it, And the man was amazing. He really put a lot into a song, And when he came up with a particular arrangement on the song, that was it. I remember Max Roach saying one time, years ago, that when they wanted to get a band together, and play some music or something, they would always get Bud, because he was the most organized. He could write all the arrangements and everything. And that's why he was in Cootie Williams' band, because he was a arranger. He could write out all the parts for everything that they want to do and line up the show. And the whole thing organized musically, Before he had his riff-raff, and, with the powers that be that, put them heavy beatings on his head and everything else,
I know for me at the Town Hall concert, I felt like something that was so overdue was done.
That's a good word. Overdue, excuse me. Right, overdue. Thank you. Overdue, because how can we forget the music that Bud Powell has given us? So many musicians, have lived or have made, or have had their lights shine more through playing Bud Powell music. His tunes were perfect vehicles, for Sonny Rollins, Fats Navarro, Roy Haynes, Arthur Taylor,
And at this Town Hall concert, finally, it really was put on you to realize that this was one of the greatest composers in American music.
Right.
The whole world, really.
I was so glad that they did that, because I agree with you, it was really overdue. Because Bud is such a, he was such a big being in the music, such a big artist, and a lot of, he's, how can I say it? A lot of emphasis has been put on Charlie Parker in this music, which didn't allow Bud Powell to get his just desserts through there, because I heard some awesome things between Bud and Bird. Excuse me. On that bandstand in Royal Roost and Birdland there. That would attest to that.
I can't remember who I was either hearing an interview or reading a piece by lately, but somebody from that period was saying how much Bird was playing. He said, but for all that Bird was playing, he said, Bud was playing too. You know?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and well, when you set it up like that, I must tell you that I really thought that Bud played more than Bird. You know, and that's what I was referring to. I've heard some awesome things. I've heard Bud Powell play some awesome piano on that bandstand with Bird.
Talk about bebop, and they say Bird and Dish and Bud Powell as kind of an aside, and not really lifting Bud up to the level I think that he...
Yeah, but that's because he played piano in the rhythm section, man. But Bud Powell played all the horns on his fingertips, man. Bud Powell really had all that under control. And they knew it, you know. But I just don't like to talk in comparative terms, you know. But I'll say it another way. If we're going to talk so much about Charlie Parker and Dizzy and Monk and them, why not talk about Bud in the same way? At least as much. Mm-hmm. You know? Because Bud was... he was fierce.
No. Well, that's why a lot of credit has to be given to you and to Barry Harris, let's say, for keeping Bud alive.
Oh,
really
my
alive.
God. Yeah, I really think I remember one time I told Sonny Rollins I wanted to form a trio. This is some time ago. And play a lot of the old standards, you know. The tunes that Bud had wrote, like Un Poco Loco and what have you, you know, the Foof, Oblivion, Budo, and these things, you know, Tempest Fusion. And Sonny Rollins laughed. He said, man, that's a good idea. He said, man, because that's like new music. Nobody's ever heard that stuff, really. You know? And it's always new when you hear it. You know? Because Bud, man, oh, man. And Bud has always been like that. And when you listen back to his earlier stuff, he had the same threads going through him when he was with Cootie Williams. I mean, you know, the man is just... It just seems like he had it. You know, he was born with it just like everybody else at that time that had it. You know, you can't say where it came from. It just came out of the air at that time. You know, God gives it to whom he wants, you know. And you can't take it away from him, you know. Which I think about how proudly Bird played that song. Oh, no, they can't take that away from me. I mean, you know, this music is something else, man. And we can't look past it because we run into it on other levels and other things anyway. This music is very indicating of the future. You know, we talk about, hey, that music was played 40 years ago. You know, but show me something better, you know. And if we understand that lesson, then we can build on that to play some better things, you know.
Oh, the only thing that's really holding it back is not being able to play every day the way we did then when there were 50 clubs in New York.
Yes.
And you could play 24 hours a day.
That's very true. You need those sessions so you can work out these ideas and see if they work. And see what's wrong with them. Add whatever you need to them. Put the ingredients together and get them working, you know. I was talking about that today with, I saw Eddie Locke uptown. We were talking about that. You know, he told me he found some pictures of me. Art Blakey. and Lee Morgan and the guys back then at the Jazz Gallery. Remember that? And then we got to talking about the same thing you mentioned in the sessions. The guys don't have them today where they can really, bone up on the music, and shed on it with one another, Because the best way to do it is to do it, It's not about talking about it, it's to be doing it with the rhythm section and everybody doing it together. And I remember how somebody would come out and have a session with you and, meet you in a session and I'll play you, for an instance, right? You wouldn't wait till next year to get this guy. You go out the very next day, or that next day you be practicing, and that same night, that very next night, you go in all the clubs and try to find this guy. You catch and say, I got you now, man. You get up on the bandstand and throw down whatever you got together, and you got to get him back. It was that competitive attitude about that instrument. But it was a love thing under it, because you both could compete on that particular level. That was the love, But, and I've seen those kind of sessions. I've seen Clifford Brown sit beside the trumpet players in this session. Everybody's playing 1,000 choruses apiece, and Clifford Brown is sitting there coaching the trumpet players as they're blowing, popping their chops and busting their veins, He's coaching them, saying, yeah, man, okay, that's nice, do this. Well, I was born in Richmond, Virginia. I don't know anything about Richmond at all, since I was only there for a day and Mom's got me north right away, the very next day. So I was in Richmond actually one day. And I went to the East Orange, New Jersey school system. I went to Elmwood School. I went to Vernon L. Davie, and I went to East Orange High School. And I was playing, they had me going for the concert stage at that time, because my mother and father were both musicians, and they played the piano, and at the same time they were in these various singing groups. My mother was in a chorus called the Orange Majestic Singers. This is a fair-sized group of some dynamite singers, boy. I really loved to hear them sing, Their rehearsals were very inspiring for me, They used to sing a lot of things such as the Hallelujah Chorus and big works like that, which was very soul-stirring for me at that time. And my uncles on my mother's side, she had 4 brothers whom all played the piano. And so that was something when they got together, they just took turns playing, and I heard a lot of Fats Wallace style at that time. And this stride piano. And they used to play so much. See, it was a strange family in that everybody had to entertain. When the families sit around, they would all take turns, they'd just go around. And you'd have to entertain, get up off your behind and stand up and entertain everybody for 5 minutes or so. You'd either have to dance, sing, tell a story, or play or something. You had to do something for 5 minutes. Everybody's going to stand there or sit there and wait to be entertained. So you had to come up with something. So this was so much fun, So I got into the piano. Sometime I even told a story that was fun too. Or maybe I got a little slick later on. I even danced a little bit, but it wasn't as much fun as playing the piano, because everybody respected that, on a different level. But it was very interesting that there was so many music teachers out of that group, out of the Orange Majestic Singers. And the director, Mr. Albert Tillery, could sight read a piece of music and you know, at the organ and conduct the chorus at the same time. You know, he was beautiful to watch because he opened up all the stops on the organ, man. The organ would boogie, you know. And this man was something else. I had his first wife started me out, Mr. Lawrence Tillery, and then he took over, had me for a while. Then I had some other teachers right after that, you know, Miss Honeycutt and some others. And then there was Miss Zevia Reed. I was doing classics with her, Chopin and some Bach and whomever. And like I said, I was going for the concert stage. And I was also an artist in high school. I was doing a lot of painting all the way through. Painting and art-related things, you know, sculpturing and everything. And the teachers had a nice, promising art career already lined up for me, you know. And, I heard Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, Dizzy, Fat Girl, Thelonious Monk. And I decided to play that music. And there was a guy that I was going to school with, Artie Jones. He and I both were studying the piano together. We were playing classics. And one day he asked me, you really like Bud Powell, don't you? Because I used to sing all the records. I memorized every bebop record that was ever made at that time, you know, but I couldn't do that now because, I mean, but at that time I kept up with each one of them as they came out, and I knew each one. I could sing each record, solo for solo, from the beginning all the way to the end. And the older guys used to always jam me up and make me sing these records, you know, from one to another, you know. And it was okay, too. So Artie Jones said, you really like Bud, don't you? I said, yeah, that's the guy, man. So he says, I'll introduce you to him one day. He said, I'm going to take you to New York. We're going to meet Bud. I said, yeah, sure. So one day we were uptown hanging out. And we go to this apartment, to this house, and we go up on an elevator. Did we go up on an elevator? We walked up. I don't remember. Anyway, we went up and we knocked on the door, and this man comes to the door with glasses on, and he said, hello, Mr. WP, which I later found out meant William Powell. This was Bud's father, and they called him Mr. WP. So he said, this guy likes Bud, you know. Tell him about Bud. So he told me some stories about Bud. In the meantime, Artie Jones is in the kitchen in the fridge, you know, going through the fridge. And I said, wow, this guy really knows these people, you know. And everybody's talking about, where you been, Artie? You don't call us or nothing. And they were related somewhere, you know. He was related to the family. So Mr. Powell asked me to sit and play a song on the piano. So I played something on the piano. And when I finished playing, I heard it right back. I said, what is this? And Mr. Powell came out of the back room up the railroad hallway, you know, like a railroad apartment. Way up the hallway, he comes out. And he said, come here. I want to show you something. He had a disc recorder, you know, and he's made these little small discs, like 7 inches or so, you know, and He said, you know in there by the piano on the wall there's a light switch? I said, yeah. He said, well, it's not really a light switch. He said, I installed a microphone in there, so I recorded you back here. I said, oh, wow. So he said, yeah, these are all the things I record. This is all Bud practicing. I said, oh, really? He said, sure, you want to listen to them? And he let me listen to them all, and just research them, And this is very interesting. So he's got all of these, Mr. WP has all of these schematics laying around, all these radio plans and whatnot. And that was his forte, He was really into these radio schematics, and building things of that nature, So I got involved in these tapes or discs of Bud, And he was playing all of these songs, different tempos, just practicing. And tempos and keys and rhythms and everything, 3, 4, 2, 4, 4, 4, 5, 4, 7, 4. And he was just messing around with them, And every so often, he'd settle down into a groove, and that's the way he would leave it. But he would really tear a tune apart, So Mr. Powell got tired of hearing me, I guess, talk about Bud Powell being so great, He just said, come on, boy, Bud couldn't play no piano. I said, what do you mean Bud don't play no piano? He said, come on, we had great plans for Bud. But Bud left, Charlie Parker came, and just took him away. I said, oh, come on, them guys are really giving it to us now. He said, no, Bud, we had Bud going for the classical stage, I said, oh, wow, and you don't think the man can play? He said, no, he wasn't finished yet. He wasn't finished studying. So I'm saying, well, my God, what do you want the man to do? He said, well, we had plans for him on the concert stage playing classics. So this is very interesting. So he says, if you would ask Bud to play a song by Bach, Bud would ask you what part of Bach's life would you want the song from? Because Bach went through different changes in his lifetime, and he wrote differently at different times because of certain inspirations or certain vibes that were coming through him. I said, really now? He said, yeah, well, this is the way Bud studied the composers. So he would know a composer's complete works through different parts of his life, and this is how Bud was learning and how he was building up his repertoire. I said, oh, wow, that's fantastic. I had never heard of that before. So they seemed to be so sad about him and talking about all of the studying, that was going on. I said, well, listen, if it would satisfy his teacher, I would gladly study. Not saying I would take his place, but I would gladly study, that method. He said, well, if you want to, I'll take you to meet him and see what he says. So I went to meet his teacher up the street. This is 149th Street. And I went to just up the street to talk to the teacher. So he was an older West Indian man who was bald head, great, strong West Indian accent. He was a stern man. He's a beautiful man. And he and WP had been together for ages. They were really tight. And Mr. WP gave him Bud, at a very, 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 very young age. And he had him all of that time. So here I go. I'm up here now with this man. And I noticed right away he has a grand piano. And beside it, he has a smaller piano, which is soundless. So you can sit on the piano and practice your lessons while somebody else is taking a lesson on the regular piano, It's just for fingering. And so Mr. Rollins was his name. He asked me to play something, kid. Let me hear you. So I went to play, and he didn't say anything. So he said, well, just keep playing, just play. So I just kept on playing now, waiting for this man to, give me this verdict. And he never said anything. And I just kept playing. Then all of a sudden he said, okay, you have to come back. And I'll get you some books for you. And we'll start on you. I said, great. So anyway, that's all he said. So I came back and he gave me all of these books. And I'd play like maybe one tune out of each of these books, these different various books he gave me. And they were strange. They were all seemingly unrelated, man. And I practiced them seriously. And rendered my lesson to him, and was really strange, because I would play and he didn't say very much. He just watched me and watch. And I would stop or something. And he said, why'd you stop? I'm the teacher. I didn't tell you to stop. Just keep on. And I would play on and I'd make a mistake and then I'd stop there. He said, no, you don't stop there. You don't stop unless I tell you to stop. A mistake is nothing. The tune has a beginning and an ending. When you start it, you got to keep on to the ending. You don't worry about the mistakes. You just keep playing right on through. And unless I tell you to stop. So, okay. So I'm going on, and I got to some fingerings that really didn't seem too comfortable with me in the book, and I kept making a mistake at it. And he still didn't say nothing. He kept watching me. And he took a red pencil and scratched the fingering out in the book and wrote the fingering that I was playing. He said, you play it this way, the way you played it. That's more natural for you. I said, oh. He said, I've been watching you. I see what you're doing. And this man was really intently watching me, intensely. And I got a lot from this man, studying with him. He was very stern and very strict. And he had so much spirit. I loved him, He used to catch the fish man from the window and tell him what he wanted. And the guy would bring the fish up to the apartment. He loved fish, from the cart downstairs, the fish truck, And that was a very good period for me because I was already playing at that time, which was strange anyway, because with Artie Jones, after we leave high school, we would come to New York and hang out, and I would meet Max, Bird, and the guys and hang out, or Bud and Sonny Rollins. I knew these guys from all the way back from year one, And this is what I was doing every evening after school. And I'd come back to school from New York the next morning hanging out with the guys. I'd go directly to school. And Moms knew what was happening because I was in touch with her, you see. And a couple of times I went out on the road. And it was okay because, I had the notes that I needed. And saying that I was okay, excusing me. I went out a couple of times with, a few times with different blues bands. I went out with the Railvacs. Hank Mobley was in the band. That was Lester Harris. And I think Flap McQueen was in that group. Was it Flap? I think so. And Sticks McGee. Charlie Purcell was in that band. That was really fun. And James Tyler and Hank Mobley. Boy, we'd go down south on the road, and Sticks McGee would run up to see how the money was, go check the receipts at the door, and we would start playing confirmation. He'd run back up on the bandstand. He'd run up and grab his guitar, say, no, and start playing. You got a nickel, I got a dime, let's get together and buy some wine. Drinking wine, Spodioti, drinking wine. Drinking wine, Spodioti, drinking wine. And man, he really didn't dig that. We just laughed. We were young, it didn't really matter. We wanted to play the bebop, And this is very interesting. I remember another time we stopped after a gig to the guy said, hey, man, let's stop by Tyler's Chicken Shack. This is a joint way out in the country, you know, secluded out there where they would go dance out there. And they had this joint. They used to sell fried chicken. And they had a band there. So one of the guys in the band wanted to see one of the musicians after we finished playing. So we go in there and these guys are playing. They're playing Donna Lee. And they're playing it fast and it was so pretty, man. I'm saying, what was that? You know, it dazzled me, man. And so they told me it was Indiana. So, man, listen, I tried to find this tune all of that time, you know. And I couldn't find it because Indiana was the underlying changes. That was not the name of the melody, you know. So I had to pay my dues to find out what that was, you know, later on. But I got so involved in that and running to New York that I was studying with Miss Reed at that time, Miss Zevia Reed in Montclair, New Jersey. I went by to see her one day, and I forgot my music and left it on the bus. And I told her I didn't have my music, Miss Reed. And Miss Reed said, well, I'm sure, Walt, if you call the bus line, they would hold it for you. I know they have it. I'm sure if you want it, you can get it. I said, well, Miss Reed, I really don't want it. I said, I want to play this other stuff called bebop. I want to play with Bud and Bird and Dizzy and Monk and the guys are playing Fast Navarro. I said, that's fun music. Kenny Clark, you know, Max Roach, Curly Russell, these guys, man, this is what's happening, you know. So she said, okay, Walter, so, but good luck. And before you leave, she went in her pocket, she took out a key to the pipe organ, because we were in the church at the time. She said, go ahead and hit this organ for a while. I know you want to, you know, because I always watch that big pipe organ. And I said, oh, great. So she let me play it for a while, you know, before I left. That was very inspiring. And she wished me all the best, you know, which was very sweet of her. And she asked me, do you know any of these guys? I said, yes, I do, you know, and one thing went into another, you know, it was okay. So I was belonging to this group called the Sound Masters, which is a group led by Willie Wright, playing tenor, and Al Armstrong played trumpet. And at the time, Al Cotton was playing bass, and the drummer was Lloyd Turner and myself, you know. And I was the baby again, of course. And they told me, say, listen, man, we're starting a band. We want you to play piano. I said, oh, yeah, if I'm still in school. They said, oh, we know it, man. We want to rehearse after school for you. And we're going to show you all these tunes. So Al Armstrong was really tight with Bird, so he was getting tunes from Bird, you know, all of these tunes. And they were all written correctly, you know, little changes in there that are very necessary that go in these songs. He had them right there then, you know. And it's very interesting, you know, like the real changes to confirmation, you know. It was strange. They were different. But that was very much fun for me at the time because a lot of this music was tried out on me. I was like a guinea pig in a group, you know. So we played all of these great things, and I memorized everything, you know. And then I used to go watch Billy Eckstine's band, you know, when he come to town in the theater, you know. I would watch him at the Adams Theater in Newark or either the Apollo uptown. And I would go in when the theater opened and stay all night. I would catch every show, listen to all the jamming in between sets and everything, you know. And I used to love that, you know, watching Fat Girl, you know, listening to how pretty he was playing behind the screen as they announced no smoking in the theater and stuff like that, you know. And this band, man, really gassed me to watch that band, Billy Eckstine's band, you know, with all these dynamite musicians in the band, you know. And I knew Art Blakey from Yay 1 too, you know. I was still in high school. In fact, even before that, I met Art, you know, because I just loved Art instantly, because Art would get on the stage with so little and play so much more than everybody else. He had the feeling and the fire and the swing. Good God, Art! I heard Art. And I heard a session one day uptown. I think it was the Audubon or somewhere, one of the ballrooms. And all these dynamite musicians on the scene. Oh man, you name it, you got it. And Art Blakey and Sonny Rollins came out and played duo, man. And Art came out with a snare drum and a bass drum and a cymbal, man. And Sonny Rollins' reed was all split and everything. And these guys, this duo wiped everybody out without a doubt. I never forgot that. Boy, the sound was so beautiful. And they swung so hard. I don't know, Art could get away with anything, man, with a drum set, man. I never heard nobody play like him. Everybody was so classy and this and that and this and that. But Art just, from the word go, man, he just swung, man, and everything just took off, just levitated when he played, you know. And Sonny Rollins with him. That was some of the prettiest music I ever heard in my life, you know. And I used to watch the group well, that was later though. The group that Miles had, you know, with Kenny Clark playing drums, Percy Heath, John Lewis, you know, and JJ and them. I guess you would call that the pre-MJQ group, you know. And that group was really hot, you know, in Bags. Oh, man. And Symphony Sid was traveling around with this band. And I used to run into him on the road, you know. And they used to make me play with him. That was such a thrill to play with them guys, man. And Kenny Clark, man. Oh, man. You know. And I don't know. I've always loved them drummers, you know. I don't know. There was some kind of connection there, you know. And playing with Max, you know, when the formal band that I joined in New York, that was great, you know. And entering in my first gig in New York was with Charlie Parker at the Apollo Bar. That was really a nice hello for me for New York. I met all the guys were standing around on the wall, you know, all the piano players checking me out. And I felt so weird. And Bird just said, "Hey man, play, I know what I'm doing." And I finished the set. And next thing I know, we're all the piano players, we all trade numbers and everything. And Bird is standing in the background looking at me winking. Oh, man. Bird started the set in the kitchen, you know, at the Apollo Bar. He was starting the kitchen with all them pots hanging down, you know, and just vibrating them pots, you know. Playing, you know. And he would play that. And by the time he walk through the audience, you know, the tables and whatnot, by the time he get to the bandstand, the tune is so hot. And Max would go home every night hoarse, hollering, "Blowbird, Blowbird, Blowbird," all night. That was really nice. Incidentally, Henry Red Allen was the trumpet player on that gig, you know. It was really nice. I think Jimmy Skank played bass on that. Hank Mobley, you know. That was really, really a good period, you know, with that band. And most of the time, our opposite band would be Lenny Tristano and his guys, you know. Lee Kunis, Warren Marsh, Arnold Fishkin and those guys, you know. So strong. He's the only guy I've ever seen could call a whole set down and it would come right out right, you know. And just as, you know, he you know just what is going to be happening. It looked like he would see ahead, you know, just what's going to be happening when you finish each tune, you know. Because he was standing there, just call them right on down. And that's how he would go up and play them, man. That would be a perfect set. You know, you can really see ahead, see the future. I remember the first time I heard Bud Powell, man. Oh, man. Down in the hole, you know, when I say the hole, I'm talking about either the Raw Roots or Birdland, where they used to sell chicken in a basket for 99 cents on Monday nights. And man, there was this guy playing piano with his pinstripe suit, you know? And he played so much piano, and everything was so clear as a bell, man. Bird and the guys were up there, Fat Girl, and man, I don't know, he just played so much piano. And man, they just dazzled me. I said, "Who's that?" Somebody said, "Bud Powell." I said, "Oh." And that signed me right in on Bud, because I never heard anything like that, you know. But back to this group called the Sound Masters. They used to present jazz concerts in Newark. And according to who they would invite over as a star from the city, they would form groups around them over there, local groups. So I got to play with guys like Dizzy and Bird and Sonny Rollins and whatnot. And the gig came up in Apollo Bar. I was really lucky. I was really happy about that, you know. And I really suspect Max had something to do with that too, you know, because Max and I were very close. And Max, Hank, Bird, and myself used to sit up every day after school, man, and talk. You know, just listen. Well, actually, Bird would do all the talking. We'd sit around and listen to Bird, and Bird was philosophizing, man, talking about the future, this day now, you know. He used to always say, one day we're going to have canned music. And the only guys that'll be able to survive will be the guys who play the blues. That's what he said, man. And I bear witness he knew what he was talking about. Because the records have taken over, you know. The guys can play the blues, can do whatever. With or without, they can always make it. You know, it's different. That's, you know. But all of that period was really good for me. I just loved every minute of it. You know, the sessions. We used to play all night. We finished Birdland. Bird said, "Let's go uptown to Thunders or somewhere in the Bronx and play." We just play all night. After we get off work, we go play until 12 o'clock the next day somewhere. Take a nap, get up and play some more. And then it'd be time to run to Birdland and play the night. And we just played all the time. It was so nice, you know. It was really nice. Miles was going to Juilliard then. A lot of musicians were staying up there on Claremont Avenue at that hotel, right up there next to Juilliard. That's when it was uptown. On Claremont Avenue, 120 Claremont Avenue. Ricky Porter, all these musicians stayed in that place, man. Oh, man, that was a fantastic place. All these good musicians. Wow. Yeah, a lot of guys. Yeah, the street. Man, there was so much music on 52nd Street, man. So many guys that could play, you know. Just looking around, you might see anybody. Lester Young, Coleman Hawkins, Teddy Wilson, Art Tatum, Bud Powell, Fats Navarro. Oh, man, Kenny Clark. I mean, you know, everybody was around all the time. All the time. I remember one day I was standing out in front of Birdland in the daytime. And this big, tall guy comes up here. Blonde hair, tall, Raglan. He asked me, where can I find Charlie Parker and Bud and these guys? So at that time, you know, I had to ask, I said, what do you want them for? You know what I'm saying? So he says, well, I'm from Canada, from Toronto, Canada. I want to do a concert with them. I say, really? So he explained in a little more detail. I said, okay. So I took him to Junior's, and we made a couple of calls, and we hooked up the group that turned out to be Massey Hall album, you know? It really made me feel good that it really came off like that, you know? And that was a really nice album. But that's the group he wanted, you know? And it was nice that they did it like that. I like the idea that they did with the recording situation, you know? Where everybody had a piece. I think that was really nice, you know?
How about Max? Why don't we get into this, since that's the first piece of recorded material?
Yeah, well, Max was a fantastic musician. I remember the first time I heard him, he was playing a drum solo on I Surrender Dear with Benny Carter's band. You know, he's sitting way up on the top of the band with them drums, you know, and the lights streaming down, and he played the devil out of that tune, man, you know? Woo, it was really beautiful. Max has always been a very fantastic musician. I understand that he and JJ had the young flexibility at that time to leave the band and get with Bird, and then when Bird said let's play bebop, you know, in New York, so he was right there at the beginning, you know, and playing with Max was quite an experience, because he knows everybody. He's just such a fantastic drummer. And a classy gentleman, boy, you know, so classy and so intelligent, you know. And we had a lovely band with Hank Mobley, Ernie Henry, you know, Leon Comegys. Boy, that was a great band we had. And we did these recordings. I remember one day we were recording and Max is playing his music. And he's looking over Hank's shoulder and singing Hank's music to him at the same time while he's playing. I said, oh, I don't believe what I'm saying. You know? He's literally singing Hank's music to him while he's playing, man. This was incredible, man. Yeah, he was not kidding. Max was a beautiful musician. I remember that band was so great. We did a thing at the YMHA up in the 90s. We played a concert there, and Moondog was on the show. He had his triangular drums and whatnot, you know, his triangular clothes and everything. And we couldn't hit right away because Max wasn't there. Max was doing a recording session, and when he finally came in, he came in so exuberant, you know. He came in with his drums, his cases and everything, to slide them in. He was talking about Bird, because they were recording the album with strings. He said, man, in the still of the night, boy, he said, boy, Bird got all the ladies charmed over there. Well, man, you got to see this stuff. He said, Bird was so beautiful, man. He was just screaming about how beautiful Bird played, you know, and how all the women in the chorus, you know, were all, you know, just wiped out behind, you know, he had just had them in his trance, you know, playing these, you know, in the still of the night and everything, you know. I'll never forget that. He was so happy about that. And we played, and it was really beautiful, you know. Bird gave us so much to live for in the music, you know. I remember one day, Max's dog, Chi-Chi, at this time he was living on East 30th Street over there, and the 3rd Avenue L was still up. You know, they hadn't torn it down yet, incidentally. And Max had this little brown terrier, I think it was, mixed brown and black. And the dog, you know, Max would always leave the front door open, and the dog would go outside and come on in. And this particular day, he didn't come back. And his name was Chi-Chi. So we begged Bird to write a tune for the group, you know. So Bird said, okay, so he wrote this tune, gave it to us, and it turned out to be the Chi-Chi that we all know. And he wrote that behind Max's dog. And Hank Mobley always said, yeah, Max, he said, that's a sign, He said, you got to check all around and see what else is awry, So that's only a sign that the dog is missing. He said, you got to check all the way around and see what else is happening. Maybe you see something else that's going funny too, That was Hank's hit, But it was so nice just learning from Bird, because I was so young at that time. And they promised my mother that, they weren't going to let me get high, and they look out for me and everything. So Bird was like a daddy to me out there in that business, And all the guys were very nice to me. They looked out for me. They really were. All the guys, man. I did a lot of things with Babs Gonzalez up and down the East Coast. That was very inspiring because he sandwiched me between two great piano players, Thelonious Monk and Bud Powell. I said, Babs, what do you need me for? He said, oh, just shut up and play, Yeah, Sonny Rollins, Arthur Taylor, Bonnie Ross, Lucky Thompson, Kenny Dorham, and all these guys, man. We used to travel together all the time. I used to love that, And naturally, I used to sit in the back seat of the car, between Bud and Monk. Boy, these guys, man. But that was a learning process, too. That was really nice. And I remember one night, I think it was Hartford or somewhere in Connecticut, we stopped. We went to a concert to play. And Monk said, come here, I'll show you something. And he took me to a piano that was covered up, right? This long, grand piano, concert grand, I would imagine. And he just opened one end of it, opened up the keyboard, and he started playing the piano. He was playing Nice Work If You Can Get It at an unbelievably fast tempo. You wouldn't believe it. And he was playing all the changes, man. He sounded just like Bud. And I never heard Monk play like this. And I'm looking and listening, my mouth is hanging open. And all of a sudden, he ended the tune, he closed the piano up and looked at me and said, you dig? And man, I was so messed up behind that. I was trying to unravel that. Which only told me that he played what he played by choice, He could play anything he wanted to play, And that was very interesting to see, the way he said, you dig? Monk was beautiful. I used to go to his house and see him come in the door, and squeeze by the piano because he had the piano right in the kitchen, This great big Baldwin piano. Baldwin grand. It was a great piano. And the only place he could put it was, the only place large enough to hold it was in the kitchen. And I'd slide around the piano. Everybody had to slide around the piano, Monk would open the door and then jump back in the bed and say, close the door, man. You come around the piano. Oh, man, Monk was beautiful. And I'd leave him and go uptown and see Bud. I told him, I just left Monk. He said, where? I said, no, downtown. Monk was downtown. I said, oh. He had such respect for Monk, It's just like he was right there somewhere, Where? Bud really loved Monk. Oh, man. Understandably so, But that was such a great period for the music, And, right at the moment that I'm talking, a lot of these little things are coming back in my mind, I remember the first time I got a new record on the jukebox, in the Sugar Bowls joint in East Orange, It was beautiful. It was Dizzy's, I I can't get started with the big band. Oh man, you know. Then they had Stay On It and things like that on there. Ooh, you're cool. Oh man, Cool Breeze. Ow. Because I was familiar with those tunes, you know, because I used to watch the bands, man, you know. I always heard all that stuff live with the bands, you know. So when they had the records, you know, it was actually Capsule. That was great, you know. I remember Charlie Persip and I used to play that record. We used to burn that record up, man, of Two Bass Hit, you know, with Dizzy's big band, you know. That was beautiful, man. And we finally found out later on that it was Al McKibben playing bass, you know. Oh, man, he played so logical, you know, up and down the chords, you know. Yeah, this music is something else. You can talk forever about the music, though, man. It just gets, you know, bigger and bigger. You know, because all these things come to mind, you know, traveling with Dizzy's big band in the 50s and even playing all them dances with Charlie Parker. That was phenomenal. You know, when we played those dances, there was always a Spanish band on there too, you know, like Joe Loco or Tito Puente or somebody, you know? And boy, we had so much fun, man, at them dances, man. St. Nicholas Arena or the Audubon or, oh man, Chateau Gardens. That was another beautiful hall, man, which has since been torn down some time ago. You know, 2nd Avenue and at the end of 2nd Avenue, right there at Houston Street. Oh man, where the parking lot is now, used to be a big, beautiful hall there called Chateau Gardens. It was a big, beautiful, classy house. You know, played there a few times with Bird, man. Music, ooh, such a nice place. The Open Door in the Village with Bird. Naturally, Birdland was nice because it was right on the hot track right there, you know. And then the Downbeat Club on 54th Street, you know. And naturally Uptown. But that was all a learning period, you know. It was a real learning period, you know. Yeah. I took some lessons with Walter Bishop for a while. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. He and I reflect on that now, you know. Yeah, boy. I just wanted him to sit down and play. Don't tell me nothing. Just let me watch, listen. You know, that was very interesting, man. We had a lot of fun. Yeah, Sonny Rollins. Sonny Rollins was sweet. I could call him all hours of the night and ask him about a change or something. He would never cuss me out. Even he might have felt it, you know, but he would never give me the vibe that you know. He'd always straighten me out, man. Tell me what I wanted to know, you know. He never gave me no hassle about that. He was good like that. Yeah, Sonny, boy, he was so inspiring. Everybody wanted that Sonny Rollins sound, you know? If they had to split a reed to do it, you know? I remember the period all the saxophone players were carrying the rat tail filing their mouthpieces, making them, you know, more open, you know, on the inside. It was strange. Because, you know, I used to go around with Hank Mobley, and he and Jimmy Tyler, another alto player. You know, this guy used to do that. There's a guy, Eddie Crew, that played good alto too. Ernie Henry, oh man, so many guys, man. I mean, they could play. Ooh, you know, so much fun. And it's too bad because the guys don't have enough chance to play now like they used to, you know. We would get together and just play one tune forever, look like, you know, and everybody would play forever. And it would just go on and on and on and on and on. You could take a nap and come back and wake up and take another solo on the same tune. You know what I'm saying? because there was always something happening on it, you know? Things would be happening, man. Building and, oh man, you know, you got to situate everything. You got to build your foundation and to build on and everything. It would take a while, you know? Fast Navarro was a very meticulous builder. He would take his time and prepare everything, prepare the groundwork and everything. It's just interesting to listen and watching him do that, you know? And man, you know, and it would just keep on forever. Clifford Brown could do that, you know? They could just build forever. They'll play 20 choruses and are not even ready to play it. They're just building, you know, straightening out, getting the land cleared away, getting the trees cleared away to build a house upon, you know, and stuff like that. Oh, man. Kenny Dorham had a different kind of style. Instead of playing up and down the changes, he played across them, you know? And he used to speak like that, you know, playing across the changes, you know, as opposed to up and down like everybody else is doing. And Bird would dance on the rim of the changes. Woo! Ow! He'd play a line that would be 3 or 4 changes at one time. You know, different other keys. I don't know. Bird was different, though. Bird was different.